we're going to talk about just the power of capital. On this one, we're just going to just talk a little bit about, what is the power of capital for your business? What's it looking for? First of all, what is your business, Robert, if you don't mind me asking?
I sell jewelry. I'm a
Okay,
silversmith. I
perfect.
I make my products and sell it from there.
All
Nice.
right, we appreciate that. The reason I asked that is we're gonna use that as our kind of our kind of like I did yesterday with, I think her name was Melanie. We're gonna use it as our learning page, learning tool as we get this going. But let's go ahead and get started. Oh, I need to turn this off real quick. Perfect. Okay. So why are we here? We're here that every business deserves an equal opportunity in the market. I think that's one of the
Can't
biggest
see
things
the
that we'll.
presentation.
Oh, you guys can't. Oh, well, maybe I should share it, huh? My apologies. I don't know why I started doing that. Thank you. All right, this looks better, right?
Yeah, I can see.
All right. So the reason why we're here is because we want to make sure every business has the opportunity, to prove themselves in the marketplace, right? Whatever you are, like if you do jewelry, if you're a restaurant, if you're a tradesmith, whatever it is, everybody deserves, because one of the things that we matter is that the fundamentals still matter, right? We want to make sure that these business owners, these entrepreneurs have everything in order to gain traction, especially in this time of crisis, right? And especially now with inflation and everything happening. One of the coolest facts that we came out with, this is a research that was done in 2020. But it said 39% of minority-owned companies feel their primary contact bank contract treats the business owner with respect. Okay, obviously, as I say here with the JP Morgan Chase logo on my back, that's a number that cannot stand for being in the industry. So that's something that we really want to talk about and give business owners the understanding and the idea of how to communicate, how to work with their business, because we have noticed that the banking industry in general has underserved minorities, so it's time to change that. Okay, as we go on, we have 6 parts we're going to cover. We're not going to spend too much time on them, Robert, but if you do have questions as we jump on them, please do. But we're going to go ahead, and the first part that Ashley is going to help us out with is thinking strategically about your cash flow. Go ahead, Ashley.
Thanks, Jose. So cash flow is much more than money in the bank. And I spoke about this yesterday. Cash flow is probably the most essential piece and the most important piece a business owner could know and have an understanding. Because when you understand your cash flow, that means you truly understand the inner workings of your business. So how business uses cash flow, they use it to pay suppliers, to pay employees, rental space. That could be money going out for the space that you're renting, or it could be income coming in if you have extra space that you're renting out to others, and how you reinvest your money. Are you putting it back into products, equipment, services, jewelry, inventory? That's all goes into cash flow and what we're going to discuss about that. So key points to think about is cash flow needs to manage. You have to have a good understanding of when things are going out and when things are coming in. We talked about this yesterday about understanding your financials. That is a good place to start when you're trying to understand your cash flow. Being able to pull a profit and loss statement and a balance sheet so you can see month to month, week to week, what's going on in your business. And then having an efficient process to pay for your payables or for your payables and your receivables can also help you manage that. So with inventory, like having an inventory report of your jewelry, so you know how much inventory is sitting there, what the cost is that's going to cost for you to make it, and for what the possible revenue can come from that. Understanding that so you know, and then you can start planning and creating projections. And then also it allows you to borrow capital strategically, because if you know if maybe summertime is your slow time or the fall is your peak time, you have a better understanding of like, okay, now I am at a good place. This is where I need to maybe look for a line of credit or a loan, because I understand, or I know that by the end of fourth quarter, we're going to have a ramp up. So maybe next year I need a loan for new products or service. It just helps you create a plan so that you can move more intentionally and proactive versus reactive. So those are the big things that I like to really talk to business owners about cash flow, is to really truly understand the inner workings of your business. Because also The lender or a grant person or anybody, financial person that's going to give you capital or money, they want to make sure you understand that. And so once you understand that, you're able then to communicate that better. And it comes across more confident that you know what you're doing and you understand your business. We can go to the next slide.
Perfect. I'll take this one, Ashley. So obviously, as we sit here and we talk about your business, we talk about every business owner, we want to find out, does your business need to borrow? One of the biggest ones that we always come across is, you got to remember, when you borrow money, you got to pay it back, right? I think a lot of people forget that part. And I'll give you a perfect example. Anytime I sit here, especially with a new business owner, or not even a new business, or just a business owner looking to get capital, the first thing I always ask is, how much do you need? And for some reason, the magic number is always 100,000. I don't know what that is about that number, but it's everybody throws out 100,000. Great. Let's figure out what it is. But first thing that we're going to calculate is, how much is your payment? What are you going to use it for? What's going to go into it? Because if you take $100,000 and you break it up, no interest, no fees whatsoever, and we're going to call it 5 years, that's going to be $1,666 repayment. Okay. And that's for 5 years, no matter what. And these are things that we talk about, and you really have to understand, where is my cash flow? Like Ashley mentioned, where's my cash flow? Where is it happening? Okay. So we're ready to get capital. What does it look like? What do lenders want to know? Right? How long have you been in business? Because these are questions that will guide us to what product, but also tell us which route we need to go to. Okay. How long have you been in business? There are some banks and financial institutions that are not huge on if you're a startup, or you've been in business for less than 2 years, right? We want to know what is happening. We want to know how it's working. Is your business profitable? We want to see that. And we want to see that your financials are showing a trend. Typically, when you go get a loan, banks are looking for a historical trend saying that you're gaining money, you're becoming more and more profitable as the years progress, right? We want to make sure that you have that money. And do you know your business if it's seasonal? Because we want to know, like, for instance, I know yesterday we talked about, I think her name was Melanie. She has a tour in northern Arizona, and we did talk about that. Great. That is a seasonal business. Nobody wants to, well, I wouldn't say nobody, but some people don't want to go visit these wonderful landmarks and monuments when it's 120 degrees outside. God knows I don't. But these are things that you have to understand. Maybe the wintertime is her busy season. People are more apt to go into there. And then, do you need to build credit, or are you looking to expand? Looking to expand is a big question, because we want to know, one, it's a different type of product out there that exists for you. And number two, is that going to be additional revenue that we can count towards your business? And obviously, one of the biggest ones, will new equipment help your business? Are you going to generate more income if you have a new piece of equipment? These are all things that lenders want to know. So when we talk about credit, we want to know, what is credit, Jose? You talk about a lot about credit. What is it? Okay. Credit has a different meaning based on the content. Okay. Today, what I'm going to talk about is, it can mean your credit worthiness or your credit history. What I'm going to talk about, when I say credit, that's just a loan. It's just an agreement between a borrower and a lender. So when we talk about credit, your access to credit, access to capital, that's what we're referencing here. On page, I think it's 6 of your workbook, there is a great worksheet for you to step back and really jot down your business and how it's working, and find out, are you ready to borrow money? And if you are, what's helping you with that, or what's not, or what's affecting it? Because we want to make sure, you want to make sense that you are ready to go ahead and get money. I think nothing's worse, Ashley, than when business gets money and then it just kind of drowns them, or they're only working to make that payment. I think you got to be in a good position. With that being said, Ash, are you a good investment?
Yes, I'm a great investment.
Oh,
You know,
wow. Very
a
humble
great
this morning.
ROI.
Very humble. Very humble.
So why are you a good investment, right? We talked about this yesterday about being a good leader. You are the flywheel, the center of the flywheel. You are basically your business's best asset, because you are the why, you're the reason why it started. And so we look at individuals, I say we, financial institutions or a lender will look at the owner, the owners, and see what is it that they're able to bring to the table. Are they good leaders? Are they being innovative? Are they trying new things? Do they have a lot of turnover? Do they have a stable staff? Do they have a stable work environment? And then, are you familiar with your cash flow? Are you able to talk to it? We talked about seasonality, how things are moving in and out of the business. We look at that. And then we also look at the collateral. Collateral is, if you're purchasing a building or if you are getting equipment. And lenders also look at, collateral with accounts receivables. If you're looking for a line of credit, we'll see how much inventory that you have. So those are different things that we look at to see is this business and is this owner a good investment for us to give money to, right? That is a good just thought process of when we're thinking about when I'm going to the bank to do that, do I have all of my ducks in the row? Am I showing my business in the best light that they can pay this back? I understand how much I need and what I'm using the funds for. We can go to the next slide. So personal credit, we talk about individuals. When you're applying for a loan, I want to say almost 98% of the time, 95% of the time, or a lot of the time, lenders are going to look at your personal credit first. So I know a lot of people think, oh, I got a business, so we'll just put it all under the business. That's not how that works. Yes, we're going to look at the business, see if the business can pay the loan back. It's going in a good trajectory. It's working, but we're also going to look at the owner. What is the owner's personal credit story? Are they going to be a good secondary source for repayment? If something were to happen, are they able to pay that? So they do look at that. So it's important to really understand your FICO score, understand what's on there. And if there are negative things or there's things on there are lenders that will look past certain things. But the best thing is to be very transparent about those things and to be upfront, saying, I have XYZ that happened, but this is why. Give a story, an explanation of that. You don't want to go into the process and then a lender finds certain things out that you were not upfront about. And then there's a business score, credit score, and that gets pulled and gets reported. So if you go bankrupt or you default on a business loan or anything that comes with the business, it does get reported. And banks and lenders do look at this business credit score. But I would say, and I could be wrong, right? But I feel like the personal credit score tends to hold a little bit more weight than the business credit score. I think the business credit score is important, but we always look at the personal credit score. We can go to the next slide.
Ooh, this is my part. Robert, you're learning so much today. Man, we're gonna quiz you at the end of this, Robert. We have so many questions. All right, so now that we talked about your personal credit score, the business credit score, we talked about that, and we're ready. We found out, yes, we need a loan. I'm a good investment. We found all this great stuff. Now we're gonna find out, okay, what financial information is important. So when loan officers come out, they want to feel confident that you have extra funds, not just enough, break even, but more than enough to pay off your business credit and pay off your loans, right? Kind of like Ashley mentioned in the last chapter, be upfront with your lenders, because guess what? A lot of this information that we're about to go over, we can get a lot of information for you. For instance, do you owe back taxes? If you say no, and we pull out your tax returns, it will be on there, and then we can have this conversation. Because one of the biggest things that we keep talking about is you want to make sure that your lender is confident with you and feels confident to go to the bank and say, hey, Robert, you have a great business. We're going to go ahead and I feel it's a great investment for us to invest and extend credit into. So what we need is tax return. Newer businesses will need to provide both personal and business, and typically it depends on every financial institution, but you're looking about 2 to 3 years. Something else that they'll ask for the newer businesses, other than just tax returns, is projections and see what your sales kind of goes into. But keep in mind your tax returns, if you're on extension, they'll ask you for all that good information. So just make sure you have it ready. Talk to your CPA, talk to whoever helps you with your accounting, and make sure that they have that all ready to go. Exactly the same as your balance sheet. Okay, your balance sheet, banks, we will take some information off of this. A lot of lenders, and Ashley, correct me if I'm mistaken, but a lot of lenders, we prefer the balance sheet over the profit and loss statement, which we'll go over that in just 1 second. But make sure you have these, and typically what they'll do, if you're looking for a loan like right now, they'll ask you, year to date, what did your first half of the month or half of the year, look like? So make sure you guys have all that information readily available. Keep a track of it, especially if you're looking to get credit here quickly. Profit and loss statement, obviously the document summarizes revenues, costs, expenses, everything related to your business during a specific time. right? This is a great one for not just the lenders. Obviously, you want to see where your money's going, how it's all itemized, but it's actually a really good tool for yourself as well. If you don't have this from your accountant or your bookkeeper, I recommend that you take advantage of it because it's a really great tool for you to look at and say, okay, where is my money? You know, if I made, you know, Robert, if you sold $200,000 in products, right? Well, where's it going if your account's only sitting at, you know, a much lower number? It's like, well, where am I spending money? Am I spending too much on marketing? Am I spending too much on where it's going? I think those are one of the biggest parts that can really help you out, and it's something to take a look at. But those are typically the ones that they'll look for when it comes to your credit, when you're looking to get credit.
And one thing I'll add is that if you are a startup business and you're looking for funding, they'll ask for your personal tax returns, and then they'll ask you to bring in 2 to 3 years, 2 to 5 years sometimes of projections.
Mhm.
So of what your business is going to do. So when you're going to look at credit options, different things like that, if you're a newer business, they are going to look at that. And sometimes they still will ask for projections, even for
Mhm.
existing businesses, to see what you guys are going to do. So
Yeah,
what are your credit options?
great
So
question. Great
there are
question.
a lot of different things that you can look at, right? And there are a lot of ways your business might be able to access capital. And it may not always look the way you think it's going to look, but there are options out there, and we're going to talk about what those are and how you use them. So we go to
If
the next slide.
real quick, Ash, if I could just jump in real quick. When it comes to these products and everything that's happening here, Robert, keep in mind every bank is not the bank for your business. Okay. Go find the correct bank, the correct financial institution, because not everybody sells the same product. And not every industry is the best for that bank. If there's a bank, for instance, I know there's one here locally that would never touch a restaurant. Not that there's anything wrong with the industry or it's just they didn't have the expertise into it where other banks feel more comfortable and work with it. So whatever your business is, find a bank or find a financial institution that actually knows your business, knows your products, and feels very comfortable. Sorry, Ash. I feel like that's a key part for me.
No, it is. I think that was a good point. So business credit cards, I think they're a great option, especially for newer businesses. I mean, for all businesses, but like an easier way in the door of building credit, getting credit options. I do say that with the caveat, you still got to manage it correctly, right? You still have to not put yourself into a situation where the credit card is the only way your business is staying afloat. This should be just another tool in your toolbox, right? It can help with cash flow management. It's convenience and control. Different financial institution or banks offer different types of like business credit cards that have points, rewards, or you can give cards to your employees and set restrictions to them. There's all these different things, and it also helps for fraud. So it doesn't give people access directly to your operating account. It's just through your credit, right? And it just creates more security and a little bit more flexibility. And it's a good option. When we're talking about credit, personal credit, when you apply for a business credit card, it will be based off of your personal credit. They will ask you for that, and you will be a guarantor on that. So they'll look at you and your business, but it is a great option. Again, you want to have a plan when you're using it because interest rates are a little higher on these type of unsecured types of credit. So you want to be mindful of that. Like if you're looking for a larger purchase, and you're going to keep it on there for more than 12 months, maybe a credit card is not the best option. Or if you're going to do that, make sure you have a plan to pay it off so you're not just paying a whole bunch in interest. But it's a great tool to use for gas, incidentals, different things like that. And then you pay it off at the end of the month and you're building good business credit. Business credit cards will not show on your personal credit. It will show on your business credit score. They'll pull your personal credit just to look at you as an individual, but it will not report on your personal credit. So we can go to the next slide. And then a business line of credit. I hear that a lot, and there are a lot of different options when it comes to a line of credit. Typically, a line of credit sometimes can pose as a challenge for newer businesses because a lot of times a line of credit, we want to look at historical financial data on the business because it is an unsecured line of credit essentially. So we want to make sure the business can sustain it. And a line of credit is for short-term use. Short-term use is anything that's going to not need more than 12 months, right? A line of credit is for, if you need to purchase something really quick and you're going to pay it off, or if you need to cover payroll, different things like that. It is for short-term use and typically is on a variable rate with a line of credit. So what that means is that it's going to be based off of what the market's doing. They will give you a floor. What they'll say is that the rate will never go under X, and they'll give you a ceiling that the rate will never go over X, but it can float in between that, right? So that's just something you want to be mindful of. Also with lines of credit, a lot of financial institutions will put in a requirement to have a rest period. And what that rest period means is that you cannot use your line of credit for typically 30 days. I've seen 60 days where there's no balance on it. They want to make sure that we're using this for short-term use. And this also gets looked at annually based off of your business financials. So things can fluctuate depending on what's happening. And also, if you don't pay off the line of credit and you keep a balance on there for a long time, a lot of banks, when they go do your annual review, they'll put you in, they'll term it out and close out your line. What that means is they'll take the balance that is outstanding that has not been paid off, and they'll put that on like a 3 to 5 year term loan. They'll just make you pay that off, and then you won't have a line of credit. So you want to make sure you're using it in the proper way. And that's when it comes to really understanding what credit tools and options does my business need, and am I in the right product? And again, that goes to having a good relationship with your banker or your lender to have those discussions so that they can guide you to say, hey, if you're looking at purchasing a piece of equipment and you need that more on a 5-year loan versus a line of credit, they should be able to guide you. It's just understanding what the benefits are for a line of credit and how to use it. But it's also one of those things that you want to have before you need it. A line of credit is something that you'll apply for, you look at when your business is in a good position. You don't necessarily need it, but you have it there for just in case.
Ash, is a line of credit a good tool if you want to buy equipment?
No, I just said that, Jose.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that part. I got so excited.
It's
Well, just tell us about term loans. Tell us about term loans. Robert's dying to find out about term loans.
It can be used, but yeah, I wouldn't, long as if you're going to be able to pay it off within the next like 6 months, you could use it if it needs to be quick, and then you can pay it off. But normally I would say no, you shouldn't put that on a line of credit. It should go on a term loan. A term loan is basically like, the best comparison I can give is like a mortgage. It's usually over an extended period of time. It's for large purchases, real estate, equipment, startup costs, startup funding, things like that, to help with growth, expansion, and it creates predictable payments. You'll get locked in at a rate. Typically, it's not a variable rate. It's mostly a locked in rate. And then they'll say you're either paying it over 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, 20 years, however that is. And then that's why every month my payment is going to be this X. So it gives you just more information on what to expect, understand your cash flow, different things like that. So that's the benefit of a term loan. And then additional sources of capital, are SBA loans. That's government-backed loans. And they have standalone financial institutions that just do SBA. A lot of financial banks have SBA programs that you can look at. And again, you want to have these conversations. So SBA is guaranteed and backed by the government, but there's different processes, there's different fees that come into that. They have 2 different options. We have SBA 504, which is real estate, and then a 7A SBA can be real estate and encompasses all working capital, incidentals, different things like that. So you just want to make sure you have a good understanding of that. And it's really geared for newer, more younger businesses. It's not for the well-established that are doing revenues at over 300,000 or 3 million, I'm sorry, and different things like that. This is more geared for the smaller businesses that are starting up. And then we also have CDFI, which is Community Development Financial Institutions. And these are nonprofit organizations that larger financial institutions or different organizations will fund, and then they're able to give capital to different businesses in different ways. And their risk box is a little bit more lenient than financial institutions. So they're able to do things for startups. They're able to do stuff with people with credit that's not in the best shape. There's just different things, or if you're short on collateral, different things like that, they're able to provide smaller loans. Some of them they can do bigger, but those are the different options with CDFIs. And we have quite a few here in the Valley. And then there's venture capital. Venture capital, the best way is Shark Tank. That's like Shark Tank. That's the best way I can explain it. They're looking to invest in your business. Typically, they want to get a percentage of ownership in the business, and they want it in a hockey stick. When I mean like that, they see your business going and it's going straight up. They want fast growing revenue coming back. They're going to be able to get their return back very quickly. So that's venture capital. And then there's small business grants. So grants are great. I hear about them all the time. We get asked about them all the time, but I would not rely on that being it for my business. That's what's going to take me to get my business open. I would look at this more as like, this is just a cherry on top. If I get it, it's gravy. I love it. And you also want to make sure it's a good grant, because there's going to be stipulations and different things sometimes when it comes to grants. They want to see reporting. They want to see certain things. They're only focused in certain areas. So make sure you just do your due diligence, because it takes a lot to apply for grants sometimes. But again, I wouldn't rely on grants, but I would take that as like a cherry on top. We can go to the next slide. So Jose, this is you. You build your
Let's build this empire together. All right, perfect, Robert. Here we go. So now that we've kind of gone over it, and I think I skipped over the survey earlier this beginning, but that pretty much concludes us to the end of our presentation. One of the biggest ones, like I said, we really wanted you to leave this presentation is just having a little bit better understanding. And obviously we have that workbook that we'll make sure you get it, Robert, so you can at least have something to go back and work on. But what we're really trying to accomplish here is get you comfortable with what steps and what is needed when you go speak to a financial institution, a lender, a bank, whoever it could be. Because at the end of the day, all of these ask pretty much the exact same questions. It's just more geared toward what do you need the money, what's it going to go for. And I think planning before you walk in, I think is really going to help you out. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're here for you if you have any questions, if you're looking to get some capital and you just want some coaching or some prepping, what should it look like? We're here to help. Obviously, Change Lab between Raquel and Holly do an amazing job for everybody out there. So we just want to be an additional resource to that. Any questions, anything on here, Robert, that you would like to know? I'm a Capricorn, in case you were wondering.
We're both Capricorns.
Oh, yeah, I always forget that about you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. But I am new to this. I've been reading about it and just doing a lot of researching online, the internet. One question that I have is there government-backed loan programs?
Yes, that would be SBA.
SBA, okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, the Small Business Administration. Depending on what you're looking for, like Ashley mentioned, there's a 7A and there's a 504, which 504 is more for real estate, but it just depends on what you're looking for. But yes, SBA is the government back that you're looking for.
And if you go to sba.gov, you can go in there and they'll show you, they'll ask you some questions, and they do lender matches. So they'll tell you based off of your industry, what you're looking for, what lenders would be possibly the best match for your industry and what you're looking for. So that's sba.gov.
Great ad, Ash. Great. Yeah, it's a great tool.
Are you able to provide examples of businesses similar to mine that have successful financing?
I don't have any examples offhand, but I have seen people that have jewelry and different products and services definitely obtain financing. As long as they have typically you'll need to have your business plan and some projections and financials. And if you're able to curate that, they'll base it off of what they see. So when you're looking at financing and looking at lending, it varies depending on industries, different things like that, but they'll look at your net profit. So if you're looking at your tax returns, it's not your top line revenue. It's called on your M1 schedule. And you can it'll show you your net profit. And that's what a lender will look at. So if you're showing a loss, it's going to be hard for some financial institutions or lenders to give lending because you're showing that there's no money in the business. You want to be able to show that there's money in a business. And if it's newer, that's where SBA, they'll take your projections based off of that to give you financing. So there's definitely opportunities, and I've definitely seen businesses that focus like on a product or a service such as yours get financing, but I don't have one specifically that I'm able to share like in this setting, but I have seen businesses get funded. It's just the process of what you choose to go through and then how you navigate that. And we definitely could help you with that if that's something you're looking for. But I think the biggest thing is understanding, what do you need the lending for? How are you going to be using it? And how much do you truly need?
Yeah, and I think in like one of the industries I've worked with, one jewelry company, they're higher end, but they had like a line of credit, for instance, and they use a line of credit so they can buy product and then, you know, sell it and move it, or like even if you manufactured it, that's something that we'll work on. But it, like Ashley mentioned, it just depends on what you're needing the money for, Robert. If you're looking for, you know, to buy a building, buy a suite, build out a suite, if you're looking to get, you know, maybe some glass containers for you to display your work, whatever it could be. It just depends on theirs, but there are resources out there, like I said, and Ashley, like Ashley mentioned, we'll be more than happy to kind of help you put that together and see how we can help.
And I know Raquel is asking, had a question in the chat. So capital could definitely change the trajectory of a business if it's used correctly, right? At some point, we have to learn how to leverage different capital in different ways, because that can allow you to expand, allow you to bring on new employees, allow you to then get more inventory. And that again helps with bringing more revenue, and everything's starting to flow a little bit more. So I know there is a lot of distrust in different communities when it comes to financial institutions, right? We completely understand that, but it's just finding the right people. It's just kind of like dating, right? You got to date people, understand them, make sure they're a good fit. Are we a match? Do we have things in common? You know, understanding that and building a relationship with your banker so that you guys are having that open dialogue of what's coming up, because then you can start planning for that. So this year I have my business plan. I know what kind of revenue's coming in. I know what I'm going to do. I can start planning, say, first quarter of next year, I can hire on another employee. Then that will add more expansion, more things that I can look at, you know? So that's how I would look at looking at that and leveraging capital and how that can really be helpful. And then a lot with minority. What specific? Okay. I would say when we're working with underserved or minority owned businesses, I would say the trust with banks.
Yeah, huge.
That's the biggest thing. And we see that across a lot of underrepresented communities, is trusting and not just wanting to show everything in cash. Cash is great, but when it comes to lending, we have to see that cash in the business. So I would highly suggest is, one, education on everything, like what we're doing now. Knowledge is power and it's key, and absorb that. But then also you got to put that stuff into action, into play, and to use resources that can help that, because there's a lot of opportunity. We talked about minority certification and supplier diversity. That is a great option for minority owned businesses. And then for lending, right, it's just about educating, understanding the principles of, you know, financials. You have to have that. If you're going to any financial institution for lending, you have to show that. We have to have that in there.
And the supplier diversity one, I think, is one of the biggest. I know one of the questions that Raquel just posed was, how has capital transformed a business? There's actually a business that I worked with a while ago that actually was able to get certified as a minority women-owned business, and they were able to get a contract with a large electricity and water provider with the country. with the in Arizona. And the reason why that was huge is because now that we got that contract, well, we were able to secure a line of credit, and we positioned her so when she's ready to take on that contract that was going to revolutionize her business, well, guess what? She has the funds, she has the access to capital. So she doesn't even go buy raw materials. Guess what? She has the money and she's not waiting, because these larger companies, they don't pay you every week or every 2 weeks. They have that net 30, net 45, some of even net 60 days, right? So you want to make sure you have that capital ready to go.
And with supplier diversity, and we're talking about those things, it's a process. Just because you go get your certification doesn't mean you're going to instantly get contracts, right?
Mhm.
It's still a process in building relationships. And again, building up the credit worthiness of really setting a plan of what we're going to look at. And don't be afraid to do collaboration with things,
Oh, that's
working with
huge.
other businesses, going after contracts together. That also helps. And that helps build relationships and credibility of what you're able to provide to that larger corporation.
Absolutely. Before we go to your question, Raquel, Holly's had her hand up forever. Her arm is so tired. Holly, I'm sorry. Ashley just, skips you. But
Yeah.
what's going on?
Yeah, no, I honestly wanted to add more to this conversation in the sense of Robert for the SBA loans and really kind of the point that Ashley and Jose are kind of making is that what can be really kind of impactful and what I've seen as either one, not a great way to strategize of going and approaching loans, but also to builds a lot of biases and myth around how to kind of start this journey of looking for funding and especially to like looking for a specific type of funding. So in a previous slide that Jose had, I think before this one about listing about other places of financial capital, it's actually broken down in three general like aspects of seeking funding. So when you're talking about seeking funding, and I get this question a lot during my business coaching sessions, is that, well, what exactly the type of funding that you're looking for? There's debt financing, which is loans, and typically those are those type of financial packaging and products from banks and financial institutions that have an application period that require essentially the articles of organization, a business plan, and as well as to some sort of projections or even to your previous years of operations of the profit and loss statements. And then there's also equity financing, which is the venture capital that they talked about. So equity financing is essentially in exchange of this piece of money that you have, we're giving you a portion of ownership of the company. And that can in very of what people understand that kind of being is control, when sometimes it's not, in the sense of like venture capital. So venture capital is a lot for essentially wanting to grow the company over a consistent amount of time for more investment, but also for the investor to sometimes make an exit or continue to contribute to the investment of the business as it grows over a time period of typically 10 years. And that's really kind of what venture capital looks like. But most of the time too, there's a lot of small businesses that don't want to do that option, and therefore venture capital and debt financing, or I mean equity financing, is therefore not a great option for them to go and seek funding within. Where there's non-dilutive capital, which takes the form of the philanthropic dollars that individuals put into like donations or into grants. And so where that non-dilutive, the same thing as debt financing in some ways, non-dilutive is the one that, most likely is packaged in grants where people essentially are just exchanging for either some sort of, sometimes just in general of a donation, or of course, like not being able to pay back those dollars, but also in the sense of impact. So that's what a lot of nonprofits that do work in social impact would greatly benefit from grant programs. Typically, whenever it's like a for-profit business, which Jose and Ashley, please jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but whenever a for-profit business receives a grant, there's taxation dollars on top of that typically whenever they start filing their taxation dollars, and then double check too in the sense of like your own CPAs and your taxation advisors. But like typically sometimes like that is there's grant programs that are out there, but they somehow do transform into a way of being somewhat of a weird type of loan in some places. I've noticed whenever they do talk about grants, and I've seen this with other types of just organizations, financial institutions, when they talk about grants, it ends up kind of turning it into a terminology that's closer to like a loan for-profit businesses. But like for you to get better ready for these things, definitely up like ×2 on what Ashley was talking about, of getting educated and knowledgeable about the things. But most things, whenever you're starting the loan building application process, it's really understanding the intended plan that you have for the money. So like if you, and that's what your business plan is supposed to be. It's not just essentially describing what you do and the operations of your business, but in the business plan that's specific for a loan application, there should be a whole entire thing within your marketing and as well as to your strategy of understanding what this like influx of money is going to do to your business to create a positive impact, as Ashley said, of a net profit, and showing that this money is going to like affect the business in a positive way by doing X, Y, and Z, or that I have an intended plan for this money to do X, Y, and Z, because if I do that, then it's going to like affect this portion. So then I'm going to be profitable type of thing. And so that's, I think a lot of individuals, when I was doing this work of SBA loans, and especially during the COVID pandemic, a lot of individuals just really wanted to breeze past the business plan section and as well as the cash flow projections, and just felt like they needed a quote unquote completed application to just see if they got approved or denied, when really a lot of that is emphasized within the reviewer and the underwriting process that the financial institution or organization that's approving the loans goes through, of like, what is this business owner telling me about their need for this money, but also to their strategy so that this money is going to create an impact in their operations. So that's what is like, if you need to go back, I think I always tell individuals when they're pursuing a loan or they're thinking about essentially the debt financing portion and starting an application, or really kind of any type of pursuit of capital, that they need to revise their business plan so that they show and intentionally know to sometimes like the dollar amount of the single dollar amount of how much they're asking for, of like where it's going to go. I think there's a misconception that I can ask for the max amount because we do that in grants, in the sense that we want to maximize a $25,000 grant, and we don't want to ask for more than less than that because there's a possibility that we could get all of it. That's a great strategy for organizations and how they do it for whatever strategic operation that they need for that grant system. But for debt financing and equity financing, it's very different. You have to have a lot of intentionality about the dollar amount that you're requesting, and you have to have it broken down. And that's why they're requesting financial projections, because they want to see through your plan over the course of the next 2 to 3 years how that money is going to essentially impact your business positively. And therefore, that's why you're like essentially requesting this amount from them, and like factoring in all those other kind of characteristics, as Ashley talked about, of like your credit, the business credit that you're building, as well as to just like in general, again, other details that would be included into your business plan. So that's the only thing I wanted to continue to attribute to, because that's where a lot of bias and myths and also to misconceptions that I've heard over the years have definitely like stem from.
Yes, that's fantastic. You hit a lot of the points, and it's true. You have to understand what you're using the money for, because at the end of the day, debt that's an expense that you have, that's going to be coming from your bottom line. So you have to prepare for that. And you don't want to ask for too much, because again, you're paying interest on that, right? If it's not a grant and it's just equity financing or debt financing, you got to pay that back. It's coming from the bottom line. And on here, Raquel, you asked about more for newer businesses. The first step I would take for a new business is a business plan. You gotta really sort that out, kind of what Holly was saying. Have a plan, a strategy. What is my audience? Who am I going to get that? Because your projections are projections, right? They're not here, but you want to get as realistic as possible, because that is how you're going to pay back the debt. And that's also how you can show, like, is this going to help me grow? Am I able to make a larger reach and impact, bring in more revenue? So business plan, and then breaking down, what do I need financed over the next 6 months to get me, like, what is my run room? That's how I would think about it. If I were to open my business in December, what am I going to need to help me get that to take off? What does that look like? Is it just going to be me? Is it going to be employees? Do I have a reach? Do I have engagement? Am I going to be able to bring those customers in? So those are the things that I would think of as a newer business, is get it all on paper, have a business plan, create the strategy, and really figure out what is that I need and how much am I going to need to start up.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Ashley, I think not just for startup, well, especially for startups, but even if you're already in business, kind of a seasoned business, this budgeting that Ashley's talking about, having a plan, how it is, because one of the things that, obviously as a lender, as a, financial institution, they want to make sure that you have that credit worthiness, that you're going to pay us back, that you have the character that goes into it, all the 5 C's of credit that we talked about. But one of the biggest ones is if you, for instance, go out and you get a line of credit, or you get a loan for, $50,000, and all of a sudden 3 months later, you're like, oops, I don't need 50,000, I need 100,000. Like, all right, so then they redo another loan. Obviously, that's another hit on your credit score. There's more financials, all that fun stuff. And then also you come back 6 months later, you're like, oh, just kidding, I want more because of X, Y, and Z. So that just shows, number one, it's just a lot of requests to the bank for additional credit. But number two, you didn't budget correctly, or you didn't take the time to sit down and say, okay, what do I really need? What is that magical number that's really going to sit there? And there's a lot of people who've been in this industry for a long time that can definitely help. One of the biggest ones, if you don't have a relationship with a like a CPA, a bookkeeper, somebody who can help you with that, that's the first one of the things that I would say. Make friends with them and find out who is a CPA. If you don't have a CPA, go out there and look at, because one, they're going to help structure your business correctly, and then obviously the tax liability that goes into it. Ashley and I, like we always say, we're not CPAs, we're not attorneys, we're none of that fun stuff. We're just simple little bankers, ex-bankers, I guess, right? So those are the things you really have to surround yourself with, a good team of people who know that type of stuff, so you can kind of run with it. Holly, you had your hand up. What's going on?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of go into Robert's question, which is how can I use my inventory as collateral for a loan? Using my inventory as collateral, is it a good idea? I think if in anything, it really depends on the financial institution and as well as the funding organization, if they would even accept that. Just because I know that there are some SBA approved lenders that are not with banks, but instead that their own, again, nonprofit organization, as Ashley kind of walked us through of that definition and where you could find these SBA approved lenders. Like, some of them can be very, very creative. I have known some of them to take a lot of different things, and as well as be able to be crafty with essentially getting the loan collateralized. But I think if anything, I'm going to emphasize Ashley's point and Jose's point of creating that relationship with the lending entity that you're trying to seek funding from. And so ask them all these types of questions, specifically of like, your concerns around collateral upfront, even to like pre-application. I think that's a good conversation, just because with some of the SBA loans that I've done in the past, especially with micro lending. So what micro lending really means is like anything that's below $25,000 of an ask. And that can range from like $1,000 to like $15,000 of a loan. For the micro lending program that I was a part of, they really wanted because depending on the financial institution and the funding organization, they can set their criteria sometimes of like how much of the loan needs to be collateralized. And so it's always really good to go to those institutions and ask them those specific questions of like, I'm seeking this amount. Let's just say like even something of a micro lend loan of $6,000. There's no way that I can collateralize 80% of this loan. Will that still work? Or how much of the loan, depending on how much I'm asking to borrow, needs to be collateralized, and then go from there and then ask them to. So I put in there something called free and clear. And that was another thing too. And with a lot of small business owners, and as well as to business owners that are coming from our communities, that don't really have quote unquote assets to collateralize, or even to have high value assets that are free and clear. Free and clear means that there's no lien on those assets. So a lot of individuals, when they were coming for a bank loan and like a small business loan with the organization I was a part of, they would essentially want to put up their vehicles as collateral. However, the institution I was a part of, they wouldn't accept it unless it was completely paid off. And then they also had their own assessment. I'm blanking on the word, but essentially had like the blue books kind of estimate about what that vehicle was going to be worth that day and time type of thing. And so I think if anything, that's the other thing to be kind of aware of, is that if you're putting up your inventory as collateral, the institution that you're seeking funding from could also do an estimate themselves to see if it's the amount that you're seeking and it all matches up. There's always a possibility that it could fall lower or it could fall higher than what you're currently estimating your intended collateral portion to be.
And a lot of times when it comes to, I would say more on the financial, like banking side, when we look at collateral and you're using inventory, they want to see your accounts receivable, your inventory report, and your accounts payable. And like Holly said, they'll take a percentage of that and they'll do their own assessment on that. And that's typically when we're looking at a line of credit, because there's really no collateral for a line of credit. So that's typically where we'll see it. Now, as far as just other financing, there are different institutions that do inventory financing. There's different ways of doing it, right? So I would just do research on that. I can't express that more than I don't know. Like, I just really want to push that. You gotta do the research on where you're going and see what they're doing. Look at their services, talk to somebody before you even go to apply online. See if you can talk to an individual so you can have those discussions and to make sure you have a full understanding of what they're going to require, what they're not going to require, just so that you understand that. So having a lot of conversations before you just go applying online for a loan would do a lot better to have that conversation ahead of time.
I think that really goes into Raquel's question. Sorry, Holly. Where she asked for some misconception about business financing that we encounter. One of the biggest ones is, well, my bank doesn't want to bank me, or my bank doesn't do this. And going back to what Ashley just alluded, do they know your business? Are you one of those random business that they don't know? Maybe they don't feel comfortable. It's doing your research and finding out which institutions know your industry the best. And I think that's another one. Like I said earlier, you can't go into McDonald's and say, hey, I want a taco. Well, they don't sell that product, right? That's not who they are. And it's like, well, McDonald's doesn't want to serve me food. That's not the case. The case is you have to go to the banks and find out, do your research. One of the easiest ways is ask your competitors. If you know your competitors, ask them, where do you get your financing? Where are you banking at? Because they clearly know your industry and they clearly feel comfortable with it.
And I think also too, to add on both of their points on this, is that like in doing your research, a lot of financial institutions who are giving out small business lending or even to microloans, they love to do something of spotlight articles on their successful entrepreneurs of using their funds. And so I would honestly go and do research on those stories and exactly like how they've been impacted, or even to have, I'm sure they would have the possibility to speak with you about some like questions as well too in their whole application process. What was something like, did you get like a monthly checkup, or did you get access and resources to a financial advisor through this loan? Were you able to get connected with accountants or bookkeepers that could be best kind of keep you, accountable throughout this kind of the term of your loan type of thing? And so even too, like we talk a lot about success, and unfortunately that definition, especially within entrepreneurship, always means about like growth and sustainability, which are good things, but also too like here at Change Labs, it's we talk about how much like how everyone has a wealth of knowledge themselves of experiences and what they've kind of gone through. So even too like if there's a possibility of some lenders out there talking about, or even to their entrepreneurial resources that they have, and talking about exactly what conversations are they having to get people prepared for their lending services, and see what those businesses look like today too. And like even too, if you can get in contact with them about like what was most helpful, what was not helpful type of thing, so that you better understand, sometimes a little bit more of the reality that you're getting yourself into of those situations.
I think there was, can you just racial equity in business financing, how it impacts the broader community? I would say in my opinion, this is my opinion, that's no one else's. Do I think there are a lot of disparities? 100%. And I think I said this yesterday, a while back, I do think there was a lot of redlining. There's a lot of reasons why people don't trust, and there's things, right? But now I think it's just the part that I think we're lacking in, and this is why I'm so passionate about, and Jose's so passionate about what we do, is that we're not educating our communities the right way of how to approach a bank or how to approach a financial institution. Because we hear about it a lot and you don't know what you don't know. So this is why the work that Change Labs is doing, why what we're doing, why it's so important to get the information out so that when you go to a bank, you're asking the right questions. You're having these conversations. You have your financials ready to be able to explain and talk to them. That's the biggest thing. I've seen a lot of businesses that I've worked with, especially in like all these diverse communities, is that they said, oh, I just applied for a loan and I got declined. Well, what was the response? Did you ask? No, I didn't ask, or I didn't provide that. A lot of the times, a lot of decline is lack of financial information, lack of understanding of the cash flow of the business. They're not able to explain that. Now, do people in those positions that are lending need to do a better job of educating our buyers or our customers? Yes, we do. That there's room for that. And, it's continuing to evolve. But I think we just have to educate our communities as much as we can and equip them with all the tools and all the things that we've seen go through that process, and then being there for a resource for them so that they feel comfortable. Because really, we just got to be confident when we're going and talking to the bank. And that comes with understanding your cash flow, understanding how the inner works of your business and what we're looking for. And then also knowing when to go somewhere else and be okay with that. Maybe that's not the good fit for me, and that's all right. I said it's like dating, right? They're not
It
all
really
good
is.
for you. We're not all compatible. Well, you just got to figure out what's going to be best for our business and what do we need. So that would be my response to that, is that there's still gaps and there's still room for growth in that, and we need to continue to educate and to equip our businesses with the right tools. But there's opportunity there, and we just got to continue to navigate that.
I 100% agree with you on that, Ashley, for every word. The other part that I would just add to it is this is a game that not, especially a lot of these diversely owned community businesses and communities, we don't know this game. We don't know the tax strategy, right? We make $100,000 and then we're like, oh, we can avoid taxes by, writing off everything. Great. But why is that such a scenario that we see all the time? It's because it's not taught to a lot of these communities. They don't understand they don't know that exists out there and how banks and how lenders take a look at it. And that's the educational piece that that Ashley and I feel so passionate about. And obviously Change Labs, Holly and Raquel, what you guys are doing is incredible. So we appreciate it as well. But knowing, like, they look at that revenue, they want to see, because if you pay taxes, that means you made money. So if you did that, that means you can qualify for a loan, and asking those questions. I think that's one of the biggest ones, is just educating business owners on how to play the, how to become eligible to become lendable, I guess you can say, credit worthiness, as we said earlier.
Yeah, and I think also too, because of a lot of essentially racial equity of kind of being the forefront of, I would say like a byproduct of a lot of the financial optioning for small business owners, like during the pandemic and after the pandemic, and doing like small business recovery, that there was a lot of essentially like philanthropic dollars that were put into like nonprofits to do micro lending at a way that was more equitable, in the sense of breaking down the barriers of, again, collateral being a huge barrier for a lot of small business owners. And then the next thing too is getting there was now like this whole entire push to get a lot more people of color into the spaces of the financial sector and economic sector to be representative, but also to advocate for small business owners that represented them in their communities. And so you're kind of like now seeing this huge trend that's happening, especially too with like the program that I've been a part of as of the past year, that there's a lot of individuals and the financial institution that are seeing like the huge value of the small business owners that are from these minority communities and wanting to uplift them and build these smaller economies to uplift and also to make opportunity a lot more equitable in those areas. And so yeah, I think there's a lot of micro lending programs. That's how kinship essentially was kind of formulated here at Change Labs, is essentially trying to really kind of combat that and also create racial equity kind of financing for our community here in the Navajo Nation and the Hopi Nation. And so I definitely would suggest, especially too, if a lot of people have a lot of valid terrible experiences with financial institutions, and also to are working to kind of create those to be better, because those are sometimes are the easiest places to get business banking options and things like that for their small businesses. But also to, like, as Ashley and Jose and I'm saying, and or that's what we're doing in workshops like this, is again just networking, talking with other people, even too if you're like specifically looking for those types of financial institutions. I believe a great kind of place to start looking at that is something called Center Native, and it should be a resource for entrepreneurs or even to individuals who are looking for just like resource sharing, and as well as other institutions whose like initiative is to uplift and support Indigenous either entrepreneurs, scholars, whatever it may be. But this is a one-top tool, hopefully, to kind of showcase the Native American resources that are across the nation. So I just put it in the chat, but it's nativecenter.com. And that's actually run out of an organization based in Albuquerque, New Mexico, called Rowan Horse Consulting.
That's fantastic. Real quick, Raquel had a question that said, what strategies and resources are available to entrepreneurs on federal trust land who may have different legal or regulatory consideration when seeking financing? So the resources are out there. Obviously, the Change Labs of the world. These are the organizations that are really in the community that's really going to help. But also when it comes to financing, there are companies, for instance, I know there's a CDFI that lends on federal trust land that will actually lend directly to it. So there are options out there. I would just say reach out to your local community, reach out to your local leaders, and get connected with like these Change Labs of the world, and they can connect you because the resources are there. They do exist, but just as we say on non-federal trust land, have a plan, have a business idea, have a business plan. Let's put those two words together, and really focus on how you're gonna attack the market. I think that's one of the biggest strategies and resources that can help you guys with that.
I think Robert had a question as well too, a little while back there. So he had asked if there are seasonal loan options for businesses with a fluctuating demand, like holiday seasons. So have you guys come across any types of loan products that would essentially account for businesses that are very seasonal?
So there are a couple options. They do contract financing. There is contract funding options. So like say you're going to have a busy season in December, and like it's considered like contract financing. So like if you're going to have a busy season and you need to like get inventory, you need to get up on inventory, they will lend. Some institutions will lend based off of that contract, and then once you get paid, they'll ask for the money back. There's also I'm drawing a blank right now. There is oh my gosh. There is financing. Well, they'll just base it off of your inventory. They give or your accounts receivable.
Factoring?
And factoring, yes. Oh my gosh, I haven't had enough coffee.
That's a rough one. That's a rough one.
Factoring is another option. You have to just do your research on that and get with a really credible organization. I would say that with anybody, but with factoring, you just want to make sure, but they can do stuff like that based off of what you have coming in, seasonalities, different things like that. They have more flexibility on those. So those are the two that I would speak of and have you to do more research into those areas. Great conversations.
Thank you.
Raquel,
right.
amazing questions in the chat.
I had one more last question in the chat. In your experiences, how important is cultural competency in financial services when working with Native entrepreneurs, and how can institutions improve in this regard?
Well, I can't speak on how institutions should improve. I can't speak on that, but I do think it's important to have a good understanding of, like, the laws, the regulatory things, especially when you're going on to like native land and communities, and because there's different lending options and different things that you're able to do. So I just think, again, that continuing to educate and to understand the communities that you're serving and representation matters. I am a true believer of that. And really understanding the culture and the community so that you're speaking to things that they can relate to, I think is really important. So that would just be my personal opinion on what I feel like, just not even institute. I just think the world just needs to have a better understanding and to be open to different cultures and understand their needs and the gaps that are in those communities.
Especially when it comes, like, if this is your new marketplace, let's say, if you're bridging in, maybe you're going from, one tribe to another, you're going from one state to another, knowing the different cultures, I think that's going to help just your revenue. Because Ashley always says this, she says customers are your revenue. So if you're getting new customers, if you're going into, that's revenue for your business. I think it's very important to know the cultural, to have that confidence, that competency that you mentioned, Raquel, especially when you're going into the financial services and find out, based on this community, I've done my research, they buy X amount of, dollars of this product that I sell. And then obviously you're going to go in there and be more well accepted, and you're going to go into a community that's going to take you in. I think that's a big factor that goes into it as well. But great questions though.
Yeah, I would, I don't know if this is to me either, Raquel, and the work that I do and have done. I think if anything, it's great to have like a person from our communities into those conversations, especially in the underwriting process, or even of what I've done of like venture capital and like pitching businesses to an investment committee, is like really kind of talking about the impact that it would make, especially in the sense of like, kind of bringing to light a lot of the barriers that may happen. A lot of us maybe only bringing in our own perspective of how we're raised and how we essentially kind of navigate through the world. And so diversifying a lot of those conversations of, bringing opportunity to light and giving light to, some of the barriers that these entrepreneurs may go through, although people may not ever experience it themselves who are sitting in the room and making those decisions. That's why I think, if anything, we need to have cultural competency in these areas where these decisions are made, because I think at most times, because we're everyone I feel is afraid to be wrong and afraid to make the wrong assumptions about things. So then it's best not to make any at all and like not to progress forward. So then I think that's what kind of happens. And as we're diversifying a lot of these spaces of the financial sector and entrepreneurship and influencing decisions around programming to better support a lot of these efforts, I think if anything, it just really kind of works in favor of, opening the door and opportunities for a lot of Native entrepreneurs, but even to like Black business owners, women founders, nonprofits that are trying to work within this, that are like essentially led by people from their communities. So I think, as I've always told a lot of people, that, I would say it's very rare for me to come across an entrepreneur that actually has gone to business school. And like essentially pursued a whole entire financial degree, or has a marketing degree in their back pocket that they can essentially pull out and pursue within. If anything, most of these entrepreneurs are coming from a place of passion, and also they saw a need in their community, or they saw a way to essentially take care of their families and their loved ones, or just their own like financial responsibility to themselves. And so therefore, like, they're figuring this out for the first time. And to have somebody in the room who has that kind of experience of a loved one, a friend, their own like essentially time pursuing it, to better kind of shed light to like the reasoning why someone's financial projection is always in the red, or like why they are essentially doing all 5 jobs of their business and they can't expand, and that they have to travel like 3 to 4 hours to get to a flea market and back, and that's the high cost and expense of their business, and they can't get rid of that kind of line item in their cash flow projections, and further explain that to the underwriting process and as well as to the investment committee, then that's what's needed. That type of voice in those spaces is needed.
I would agree.
Awesome. Great. Well, I'm gonna hand it back off to Raquel.
Thank you. Thank you, Jose, Ashley, and Holly for answering all my questions so beautifully. And everyone in our audience, thank you as well. Thank you for being here for your presentation today. And Jose and Ashley, thank you for your presentation. This recording will be ready on our ChangeLab YouTube channel very soon as we can get the final edits created and then the upload ready and finalized. I have just one more piece of information to share. Let me share my screen really quickly. We have our next event coming up on July 23rd. It's another workshop. This one will be hybrid. We will have our speakers from the Grand Canyon National Park Service here at the eShip Hub here in Tibet City. We will have our guests then talking about the commercial use authorization, CUAs, and the entrepreneurial opportunities in our national parks. This session will cover the basics of CUAs, permitted activities, costs, and the application process. There are a number of small businesses that the parks are looking to work with, such as food trucks, tour operators, shuttle operators, artists, artisans, and many other types of businesses. So if you fall within those similar categories, this workshop is for you. The National Park Service representative will be here on site at the eShip Hub to answer questions and to interact with our live audience. So please come join us to learn how your business can collaborate with the National Park Service and reach their park service, the park visitors, especially since here in Navajo and in northern Arizona, and then the general Four Corners area of the Southwest. There are so many parks here, and the information that's going to be shared during this specific workshop is going to apply to all of those parks. So reminder, Tuesday, July 3rd, we'll be starting at 12 p.m. daylight time, and then we have the registration link up on our website, nativestartup.org/events. And if you have any questions about today's workshop, you would like to get in contact with our speakers today or anybody else in our audience, and especially Holly and I, here are our emails. You can reach out to us. And thank you again for being here and sharing all your questions and experiences with us. Ashley and Jose, thank you once again for presenting to us yesterday and today. I hope you had fun with us, and we look forward to working with you again.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate
Thank you,
it.
guys.
Oh, and then another fun note, we've been on Facebook Live this whole time as well.
Oh, cool.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I lost all my windows. Okay, here I go. All right. Well, thank you guys. Have a good day. I hope y'all keep hydrated, keep cool, and be safe.
Bye. Take care.
All right, thank you.